I wonder if people drive by and they're like, oh my God, it's Melinda.
No, I think they just drive and going, what's going on?
Melinda French Gates is opening up like never before.
Your book is about transitions, about turning points. Do you feel like you've gone through it now, that you've crossed the chasm?
I feel like I'm still in transition. I mean, I really am. And quite frankly, I hope my whole life I embrace change.
A billionaire philanthropist and investor.
Please welcome back to The Late Show, Melinda French Gates.
Melinda's been a champion for gender equality, education, health, and human rights around the globe.
Whether it's health, whether it's decision-making, whether it's economic opportunity, we won't get there as a world if we don't make the right investments in women. I've always believed that to whom much is given, much is expected.
Melinda is one of the world's most powerful women, but she's learned that no amount of money or power protects you from the unexpected twists and turns of life. Since the mid-90s, she's been known as a driving force of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, often defined by her marriage to the man behind the Microsoft empire. But now she's stepping into a new spotlight, carving a path that's unmistakably and unapologetically her own. I wanted to get a sense of the Melinda behind the headlines, the Melinda before the Gates, and travel with her to a special place in Seattle where it all began, when she was just Melinda French, starting a new job at this little company called Microsoft.
This is the neighborhood where you bought your first house.
It is.
Does this bring back memories?
It does. It definitely does. I loved living over here on this side of the lake.
And you bought this house with your own money from Microsoft stock,
Absolutely.
which I'm guessing was a big deal for a single gal back then.
It was. It felt very independent to do it, and I
Yeah.
was so excited.
Very grown up. What did Catholic schoolgirl Melinda from Dallas think about you just striking out on your own in Seattle?
I was exhilarated by the whole thing.
Your dad was part of the Apollo missions. He told you to learn how to code. What was it about the tech industry that hooked you?
Well, I always loved math. I was a math nerd coming out of 7th and 8th grade. And my female math teacher in high school, she brought these computers into the school, about 5 Apple IIs. And it was just kind of the adventure. Programming was like, it was both creative, but it was a logic problem, and I like logic problems. My dad bought us a computer at home, and so we were not only programming, but we were also keeping the books for my parents for the real estate business, so I also learned the flows of money.
After graduating as high school valedictorian, she went on to Duke, earning both a BA in computer science and an MBA. In 1987, Melinda moved to Seattle to join Microsoft. The company was pioneering the software revolution. It had just gone public, was releasing groundbreaking systems like Windows 2.0 and Excel, and Melinda began rising through the ranks.
What was the culture of Microsoft back then? Like for better and for worse, I want to know.
There were some odd characters, including one developer who drummed his way with drumsticks around his office. And I thought, well, there were some odd characters in computer science at Duke, and that's okay.
Yeah.
There weren't very many women. And in particular, there weren't that many technical women. It was like a boys' debate club. You'd go into the meetings and you had to, have your points and know what you were gonna say and be ready on your toes and think fast. And I learned to play that game, but it could be wearing over time.
You met Bill shortly after you joined Microsoft.
I did.
Did you have any idea how dramatically your life was about to change?
No. Because I was dating him and I was dating a few other people, and I had a large group of friends outside of work. And with those friends, I would go off to coffee houses, or we'd go to films. We would go hiking on the Olympic Peninsula on the weekends. I didn't know that things over time would become serious with Bill.
When did you realize, oh my gosh, my life is never going to be the same?
We dated quite a lot. We'd, broken up a few times, but I do know on the day I got engaged, I was like, whoa, what have I bitten off here?
Melinda went from the anonymity of being an independent career woman to a life in the spotlight, married to the world's most famous tech scion. She stayed on at Microsoft through the iconic Windows 95 launch and had a hand in a little-known project that was, let's just say, ahead of its time.
When you worked at Microsoft, you had this project called Microsoft Bob.
Yes, a complete failure. I mean, some of those early concepts in Bob are actually starting to come to fruition now. So the thing that people always like to make fun of is Clippy. You know, Clippy
Yes. Oh,
up.
yes.
Oh, you remember Clippy?
Yes.
Clippy actually was one of the early agents that came up in Publisher, and then Bob. The idea of an agent was really there.
In spite of its failure, today Bob is seen as a prelude to AI assistants like ChatGPT. Melinda also played a part in some of Microsoft's greatest early successes, like Word and Expedia. But 2 years after her marriage to Bill, Melinda left the company to focus on raising their children, daughter Jennifer, followed by son Rory, and their youngest Phoebe.
What did you do to try to keep things normal?
I made sure my kids went to the local schools here. You know, they have to deal with which kids are sincere, which kids aren't sincere, who puts on a show because it's my kids, you know? I went through the years of navigating the flip phone and later the smartphone and working with other parents, or if there were disciplinary problems, or if my kids got in trouble. So I just tried to keep life for them as normal as we could.
What was never normal?
Ha! Never normal. Having a trampoline room inside your house?
I've actually been in there. That's a pretty cool room.
Phoebe, my youngest, her big thing was she used to try to get any adult she could get at a cocktail party to go on the trampoline.
You had this power career, risen up in management. What was the transition like to leave work and be a mom full-time and let that go?
Really, that had a lot to do with, you know, Bill was the CEO and traveling all over the world, and to have the family life we wanted to have, I felt like I wanted to be home. But it was really hard on me, so much harder than I expected. I have this new little baby who I adore and love, but you know, I don't have my career anymore. I'm not around all these hard-charging people, intellectual topics.
So much of the world defined you not based on who you are, but who you were married to. Did the pressure on Bill or Microsoft and you ever make you feel alone or stuck?
Well, I didn't define myself that way.
Good.
So I knew who I was all along. So I think, you know, there were times I felt pressure, but I could turn to my friends and they would remind me, no, you got this. You're smart enough to figure this out. So I had to learn over time how to rebuild that for myself through my friendships and also start doing some board work so I could stay engaged.
She did more than just stay engaged. Melinda helped revolutionize philanthropy. She took the reins of their foundation with plans to put billions of dollars back into the world. They began funding solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems, like education, vaccines, maternal and child health. In 2010, the couple joined forces with Warren Buffett to create the Giving Pledge.
You're seeing more and more people come forward. We have 40 other couples signed up in the United States who have pledged to give away over 50% of their wealth. That's huge.
I don't believe in spending money that doesn't do anything for me when it will do something for somebody else.
Some people think it's inspiring, but it's all talk. There's no accountability. Are you tracking it, and is it working?
We are tracking it to the extent we can, but what I do know is that a lot of the philanthropists have learned from one another, and they'll get inspired by another philanthropist and then get going.
For 3 decades, Bill and Melinda Gates built their empire of growing and giving, but not without some damaging headlines. There were reports of questionable investments and programs, Bill's association with Jeffrey Epstein, and allegations of marital infidelity.
What was it that made you ultimately say, I need to get out of this marriage?
Yeah, the details about that will remain between Bill and me and our kids. That is, you know, that was a very painful time for all 5 of us. And I think it deserves privacy. As many people who've gone through divorce know, it's rarely one thing that happens. It's, you know, a series of things over time.
He said that the dissolution of your marriage is his biggest regret. What was your reaction to that?
It is sad that the behavior that happened led to the dissolution of our marriage. It was the behavior. And you have to change your behavior to be able to be in a trusting, intimate relationship. And if that can't happen over time and you've given many chances, then, you know, there are consequences, right?
What about you? Like, did you let go of any dreams along the way?
Sure, the day I got married, I dreamt I was going to be married for my whole life. That is not
You know, that's not something you let go of easily. So I had to really think and feel through that decision. But the thing that I knew and that some people could hold out perspective for me is I was going to be happier on the other side.
Initially, Melinda stayed on at the foundation, but after finalizing the divorce, decided it was time to close that chapter too. A year later, Bill announced that over the next 20 years, the foundation will distribute almost all of his wealth, more than $200 billion, and close up shop. Melinda's continuing her philanthropy on her own, putting $12.5 billion to work through Pivotal Ventures, her investment and advocacy organization.
So this is my office.
So tell me what we got going on here.
Just all kinds of things. A woman gave me this in Malawi. I was just down in Louisiana last week, and it was Mardi Gras. We were actually learning about maternal mortality, and the organization gave me these.
So what do you need to feel focused? Like, tell me about your routine.
Well, you might be surprised that I definitely read email on my computer, but I actually prefer to have a lot of things printed. I can focus more if it's printed.
Hang on. Sorry.
Oh.
Boss lady. Boss lady. I love that.
Okay, so my daughter Phoebe, my youngest, her friend, one of her female girlfriends gave me this senior year of high school when she graduated high school. She's like, "You've been my mentor in life, and you're just like the ultimate boss lady." I was like, is that a good thing? I hope so.
You're making all of these bets, these gifts, doing all this research on your own. What are you seeing that you can do differently, given your social capital and your economic power?
Well, I'm using every tool in my toolbox, whether that's advocacy, whether that's philanthropy, whether that's investments, because I think all of those things are needed if we're going to really advance women to their rightful place in society. Leaving the foundation was something that weighed very heavily on me, but it became just clear to me that the U.S. was changing very rapidly before our eyes, that women's rights were being rolled back, and that I had a lot of work ahead of me that I wanted to do on that and to use my voice behind.
I mean, you were high school valedictorian. You were the only woman in your class at Microsoft. You impressed one of the smartest men in the world, and yet you still at times felt like an imposter. Is there something that you say to yourself to psych yourself up in the morning? Because I want to say it with you. Because so many super successful women still feel that way.
I think we have to look at the root of why we feel that way. Society is constantly telling us otherwise. In so many places, we walk in and there's no one else like us, or you don't see somebody who's a role model ahead of you, or you are literally told you don't belong here, or you sit at a table and people all talk over you, right? So society gives us these messages, and we do have to push back on them. So when I have doubt, I remind myself, don't be quiet. If I start to feel like I want to be quiet, I have to think about what happened that made me feel that way. And remember, that's often about somebody else, not about me.
At Pivotal, she's centering on the needs of women and girls, committing $1 billion towards advancing the power of women globally.
Women do things differently, as we've been discussing. Mackenzie Scott, I'm curious what you think of her style of giving. She's known for this more sort of no strings attached approach, whereas the Gates Foundation has historically been more sort of data-driven and strategic. What do you think of her style of giving?
I think it's fantastic for her, for where she is and what she wants to accomplish. She is living her values out in society. She's not just giving to any organization out there. She's giving to organizations that she thinks are changing society and who are effective. And I think that's phenomenal. Good for her. I wish more people would put their money where their mouth is.
I know you're friends with her. I'm curious how she's influenced you. Like, did you reach out to her as you were trying to figure out how to leave your marriage and then the foundation?
I would say probably the last 8 years, we formed even more of a friendship. She's had a little more time as some of her kids go off to college, so have I. And so we have just a really nice, candid, supportive friendship.
Women are actually coming into a lot more money. How could that change society?
I think it will change society fundamentally, especially if women control the money and can spend it the way they want. When a woman gets an extra equivalent of $1 in her hand, she spends it on her children and on her family, and she spends it on medications for her children. So women make different investments versus men. I also think when women control more resources, they will fund other women's businesses.
You know, is there like a group Power Women chat with you and Mackenzie and Lorraine and Priscilla? Like, do you trade notes about how to navigate this life?
Absolutely. But I've even in the last 2 years, especially after I saw what's happened to women's rights in this country, I've reached out to friends of friends that I never would have known before, even in Silicon Valley, and have gone and had a number of coffees and teas to try and get their perspective of what's going on. Where are you investing? How are you thinking about our democracy?
Melinda's new endeavor coincides with seismic changes in the U.S. government. Her life's work is facing huge setbacks under a new administration.
Our golden age has just begun.
The president yesterday talked about the Doge's strategy for cutting the federal workforce at large.
The new Trump administration has all but eliminated the world's leading global aid agency and frozen spending, or tried to, on thousands of federal programs, including vital scientific and medical research.
How is President Trump and these actions, how is this impacting the philanthropic world?
The cuts in USAID alone, 16.9 million women will not get maternal health services. People are going hungry because of those cuts. As Americans, is that what we want? Do we want to create more crises around the world? Or do we want peace and prosperity for others so they can live where they are? Philanthropy can take a risk that we wouldn't want government to take with our taxpayer funding, but it can prove things out at scale, and then governments can come in to scale that up.
Elon Musk and Doge, how do you feel about one man, a billionaire, having that much independent power within the federal government?
Well, it's unprecedented to have anyone come in and say, you know, we're just gonna wipe it out like that. That makes no sense to me.
President Trump handed more power over to Elon Musk yesterday, giving the billionaire and his team oversight over hiring decisions across every government agency.
We have never in American history seen a lineup of business tycoons occupying a place of honor at a presidential inauguration.
What do you make of the tech billionaires lining up behind President Trump and Silicon Valley's right turn?
What I have seen in the last 6 months to a year is many people who used to say one thing have absolutely shifted over here. Look, a democracy is made up by our beliefs and our investments and our values. And we, of all times right now, should be living those values out, not pivoting to what some comms person tells us is the right thing to do, right? That would be ridiculous.
The rollback of DEI, how's that going to be written in the history books?
Not favorably. Again, you have to look at society. Who's in society right now, and does our democracy, do our state legislatures and does our Senate and does our Congress look like society? And the answer is no. The reason you need to have, you know, all of society represented in the legislature and any governing body is because they make good policy based on their lived experience.
As DEI initiatives are slashed, Melinda is trying to fill the gaps. Pivotal has earmarked $150 million to put towards equity and inclusion in the workplace, specifically the tech industry. It's estimated that by 2030, 86% of businesses will be transformed by AI. As protections for women are rolled back around the globe, Melinda wants to ensure their seat at the table.
The Make Men Great Again movement. What's your take on that?
I don't ever like anything that pits women versus men or men versus women. That's not healthy for society.
There's a generation of boys coming up that statistics show are less likely to go to college, are more likely to feel alone, feel their opportunities are slipping away. What do you think is going on there, and what can we do about it?
Well, I think we need to make investments in those boys. They need more role models. It can be a good coach, it can be a teacher at school, but we need to come together and really deeply understand what's going on with our boys. There's been some good research on this, but further, I think, needs to be done. The truth is, there are many great men in society, and there are many great women in society. We need to support both so that they both get to where they want to be in society and can thrive.
What advice are you giving your son?
Keep going. Keep doing what you're doing. He has always believed in women's rights. He also helps keep me educated, sending me articles. Have you considered this? Think about this other point of view, Mom. I know this is your point of view, but think about this other one.
You talk about not needing to be a perfect parent, but a good enough parent. Can you explain that?
It's a concept I didn't learn till my kids were in middle school ages, and I wish I had learned earlier. I'd always been this perfectionist, and that's not always a good thing, right? Especially as you're a mom. And so when I finally learned this concept of that children need one good enough parent and they're gonna be okay, I could let my guard down because there is no such thing as a perfect parent. And I thought, well, I am certainly a good enough parent. These kids, they're gonna be okay.
I appreciate that you're still speaking up about women. It does seem like the conversation about women making strides has gone very quiet.
I don't think the voices are gone. But sometimes when you are strategizing and you're figuring out where you go next, like geopolitically, things have changed massively in the last few months, massively. So how we strategize and where we make investments and where we use our voices, just give a little time.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
The best answer is not always the quickest answer.
Yeah.
So it's not always first mover or first speaker that has the advantage. Sometimes it's the person who quietly strategizes.
Melinda French Gates 3.0. What is the next chapter that's hasn't been written?
Who knows? I am so excited. At least another decade of work, and then we'll see from there.
What's your take on where we're headed?
I don't think any of us know where we're headed, quite frankly. We've never had an administration quite like this one, and also some of the administrations now around the world in Europe. So anybody who tells you they know exactly where we're headed, I don't think we do.
Are you optimistic or worried?
I'm concerned is probably the best way to say it. I am optimistic when I see great work still going on in communities and at the state level, but when you see certain directives coming down and things happening so swiftly, that's deeply concerning to me.
Yeah.
And especially the rollbacks for women. So for me, my work continues. I really want to make sure that women can step into their full power and advance in society in both the US and globally. I believe that we need to create a world and make changes in the world where women can fully step into their power. We all have power, right? But there are barriers in society that hold women back. You know, for a woman to have her full power, she needs to be able to voice what she thinks is true, make her own decisions about herself and her family, and have her own resources that she can decide where and how to spend them.
So, do you finally feel unburdened by what has been?
I feel very much that I can make the decisions I want to make, live the life I fully want to live, and use the resources, which I believe is to whom much is given, much is expected. And so anybody in society who is unbelievably privileged, which I am, any of us owe the world to give that back and to give that back thoughtfully for others.
The country's also in transition right now. Let's wait for the plane to transition out of our sky.